Hello, my friend. Welcome in. Go ahead, switch on your fan, fluff your pillow, and slip beneath the covers. You've made it through the day, and now it's time to rest. Tonight, I'll tell you a quiet story from the past. Slow, gentle, and full of soft detail. It's a kind of story that asks nothing of you except to listen and drift. As we begin, I'd love for you to tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? I love hearing from everyone, whether you're tucked in the United States, somewhere in Ireland, winding down in Canada, or nodding off under a warm quilt in Australia. You're all welcome, and I love it that you're here. And if this story brings you even a moment of peace or helps you fall asleep tonight, please consider subscribing. It truly means the world to me, and it encourages me to keep creating more stories just like this. Now, let's begin. Now a faded golden disk hangs low over the distant ridge, casting its final rays across the clearing. The light is soft and diffused, filtered through a veil of fine smoke that hangs in the still evening air smoke from scattered chimneys, slowly curling upward and vanishing into the deepening dusk in this small colonial outpost. Scattering of wooden cabins at the edge of the forest daylight is something treasured, but evening is sacred in its own way. Signals rest in the gentle unraveling of another day's work. The wooden porch creaks faintly under booted feet. A settler, his face worn by wind and years, steps forward and reaches for the shutter beside his door. It's made of hand-cut pine slats, weathered and cracked with time. He lifts the latch iron hook, hammered into shape by the blacksmith. 2 winters agone lets the shutter swing slowly inward. It groans a little in protest, stiff from a week of damp dot inside. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of burnt wood, old wool, and baking bread. But outside, the breeze carries the earthy perfume of moss, crushed grass, and a distant whiff of livestock. There is peace in this contrasta kind of border between the wild world beyond and the soft, enclosed rhythm of home. One by one, the shutters are closed. Each one closes with a soft knock. Wooden slats fall into place, shutting out the evening light and enclosing the home in its protective shell. The man pauses for a moment and gazes westward. The sun's final edge disappears behind the trees. Somewhere nearby, a screen door opens with a squeak and shuts with a sigh. Another neighbor is doing the same, securing their home for the night. The outpost doesn't sleep all at once, but you can feel the hush begin to settle in layers. From the corner of the cabin, room leans against the wall, its handle worn smooth by 100 calloused hands. A woman steps outside, her apron stained faintly with flour. She picks up the broom and begins to sweep the porch. The sound is soft and regular straw brushing wood. Back and forth, back and forth. The motion is slow, almost meditative. Bits of dry grass, a few fallen pine needles, and a thin layer of dust are pushed gently toward the edge. A few motes of dust catch the fading light and float upward before disappearing. She stops to brush, a hand over her forehead, then resumes, slower now. Just beyond the porch, a tall iron pot rests near the steps, filled with water drawn from the well earlier that afternoon. The surface reflects the sky, now turning from blue to gray. A small tin ladle rests beside it, cool and quiet. At the edge of the clearing, the line of trees becomes shadowy and indistinct. The pines whisper in the breeze just enough to make their long needles murmur. The branches sway lazily. Far above, A few birds call out a short, final burst of sound before they settle in. A dogga, big, gentle hound pads over and flops down beside the door. His paws thump once against the wooden step. He lets out a sigh, long and low, and rests his chin on the floorboards. His ears twitch as the breeze shifts. Back inside, the shutters are latched. The windows are now dark. The hearth, once bright with a fire's crackle, has begun to dim. A few coals glow red beneath the logs. The woman kneels and adjusts a piece of firewood, gently stirring the embers to revive the warmth. The iron poker clinks against the stone hearth. The scent of smoke deepens, mingling with a faint whiff of ash and aged wood. The man returns to the door. He removes his hat-worn felt, softened and misshapen from years of weathering, hangs it on a wooden peg beside the frame. Then he gently knocks his boots together, sending small clumps of dry dirt and pine bark tumbling down the steps. With a final glance toward the tree line, he steps inside, closing the door behind him. The latch falls into place with a quiet, metallic click. Stillness settles over the porch, but the cabin is not yet asleep. A girl, perhaps 12, stands near a small wooden shelf inside. She arranges 3 jars of preserved fruit peaches, apples, and a dark syrupy jam, checking their seals. She moves slowly, taking care not to disturb the silence too much. From a high shelf, the family's Bible rests with a sprig of lavender pressed inside. Its pages are gently yellowed and edged with handwritten notes. A candle flickers beside it, casting a faint halo across the wood grain. Outside again, another cabin door creaks open. A young man walks out, carrying a bundle of kindling in his arms. He passes by the stacked firewood neatly chopped and piled against the cabin's side, and adds a few more sticks to the stack near the hearth. The logs clack softly as they fall into place. He pauses for a moment, glancing up at the sky. The first stars are beginning to appear. No lamps yet. Not quite. There is still just enough light left to finish the last of the chores before true night falls. Quiet hum of life continues throughout the outpost. A pail being set down. The flap of cloth hung over a window. The distant clatter of a metal pot being rinsed. A mother calls gently to her son, just a few soft syllables in a low voice. He replies with a simple "Yes, Ma," as he lifts a bucket and walks slowly toward the barn. His boots scuff softly along the dirt path. The air begins to chill, just slightly. The warmth of the day retreats, replaced by the crisp, clean edge of evening. Dew gathers on the grass in invisible beads. A thin mist begins to form just above the low fields, blurring the space between earth and sky. Within each cabin, life begins to soften. Voices grow lower. Movements are unhurried. There's no urgency left, just the natural cadence of winding down. A match strikes. Wick catches. But that belongs to the next chapter. For now, the world is almost still. The shutters are closed. The animals are stirring in their pens. The last bits of sun have vanished, and the people, these settlers, these workers, these quiet inhabitants of a wild place, are closing the day. One breath, one step, one sound at a time. The last strands of daylight are gone, now folded gently behind the hills and lost in the darkening treetops. In the clearing where the outpost stands, a hush has fallen, not silence. Exactly. The world is still full of small sounds, the slow rustle of trees, the occasional cluck of a settling hen. the creak of a door swinging shut. But there is a stillness to it, all a kind of quiet anticipation that evening always brings. Inside the cabins, shadows have begun to stretch. Without the sun, the interiors soften into shapes. Tables become hunched silhouettes. Corners grow darker. Familiar tools and furniture blur, their outlines no longer distinct. And so, as they have done every night, the settlers prepare to bring light back to their homes. The woman reaches for the oil lamp first. It rests on a shelf near the window, a tall glass chimney sitting atop a heavy cast-iron base. Her hands move slowly, carefully. This lamp has been with them for years, carried from a city hundreds of miles away, packed in straw and linen for the long wagon journey. Its chimney is slightly clouded from many nights of use. Her fingers, nimble despite the day's work, untwist the brass fitting and lift the glass globe free with a soft clink. The wick is short now, but still sound, and she pulls it up just slightly with her thumb and forefinger. The frayed edge is darkened, crisped from the last burning. A quiet sniff confirms what she already knows. The oil has run low. With practiced motion, she lifts a small jug from a cupboard, a squat earthenware vessel with a cork stopper. The stopper gives a soft pop as she pulls it free. She tilts the jug, and a stream of lamp oil flows smoothly into the reservoir. It has a subtle smell, somewhere between pressed seed and wood polish, a scent that speaks of patience, of preparation. She stops before the reservoir is full, just enough for a night, no more. Oil is precious. Waste is unwise. The jug is recorked and returned to its place. The lamp is reassembled, chimney sliding over the burner with a soft chime. She sets it down on the table, then pauses, looks at it. In the dimness, it's just a shape. She opens a small tin box, worn smooth from years of being held. Inside, nestled against the square of cloth, are a few wooden matches. She selects one and strikes it carefully against the tin's rough edge. The spark catches, flares into a tiny flame. A moment of brightness in the gloom. She lowers the match to the wick. A small bloom of fire rises. It flickers once, twice, then steadies, its flame reflecting in the curve of the chimney glass. She pulls her hand back slowly, watching the flame hold. That is warmth. Yes, but more than that, there is comfort. The kind that comes from familiarity, from ritual. The light doesn't flood the room. It doesn't chase the dark away. It simply softens the space, casts a golden hue across the wood grain of the table, catches on a tin cup, lingers in the weave of a curtain. Outside the cabin, a similar light appears behind another shuttered window, then another. The outpost begins to glow not brightly, but gently. Dots of warm amber light, scattered like lanterns, set adrift on a black sea. The young boy, now home from feeding the animals, kneels near the hearth. He opens a metal lanternette, sides glass, its frame blackened with soot from many nights' burnings. He winds the wick up slightly, just enough, then takes a sliver of kindling from beside the fireplace and pushes it gently into the glowing coals. The kindling catches slowly first smoke, then a tiny curl of flame. He shields it with his hand and transfers it to the lantern wick, a breath. Later, the wick blooms with fire. He grins, just a little, then closes the lantern door. The metal clicks shut. He carries the lantern toward the back room, each step quiet. The light wavers slightly with his movement, casting long shadows across the floorboards. In the far room, He places the lantern on a crate near the bed. It illuminates a folded quilt, a stack of worn books, the polished curve of an old fiddle. Back in the kitchen, another lamp is lit. The flame rises slowly, illuminating the inside of a hanging pot, still half filled with stew. The light reveals the rhythm of the walls, the gaps between the logs, filled with chinking made from clay and straw. It catches on a hand-woven rug and the carved edge of a wooden spoon. The man, now seated near the hearth, trims the wick with a tiny pair of shears. His lamp sits on a low stool beside his chair. It burns a bit lower, more orange than yellow. He watches it quietly for a few minutes, the flame reflected in his eyes. He doesn't speak. There's no need. In one of the neighboring cabins, a different light appears. It's not a lamp, but a pair of candles. A young woman, perhaps a teacher or a clerk before she came west, lights each one from the fire. She moves slowly, as if time has no hold on her dot. The wax candles give off a different glow, softer, more intimate. Their flames flicker with even the slightest breath. She places one near her writing desk, where a few sheets of parchment are laid out. "Okay, the other," she sets beside her wash basin. Catching its reflection in the still water, she dips her hands into the basin and washes the day away. The water ripples, distorting the candle's glow. A simple act, almost sacred in its stillness. The room is filled with soft layers of light and dark. A book lies open, its pages golden in the candle's reach. A strand of her hair catches the flame's hue as she leans over the page, slowly reading a letter from home back in the first cabin. The woman pours herself a cup of hot tea, dried mint and chamomile. The steam curls upward, briefly illuminated by the nearby lamp. She carries it to the front window and pulls the curtain aside just an inch. Out across the clearing, she can see faint glimmers of light behind other homes. She knows who each light belongs to. Craftons, who have 2 boys. Cool, the old Dutchman who still plays the accordion when no one's listening. The widow Hartley, who keeps a candle burning late into the night. Each light is a story, a rhythm, a life being lived quietly under the same sky. She sips her tea, cup warms her hands. On the porch, a lantern hangs from a hook by the door. Its flame dances in a breeze. It lights the first few feet of path, then gives way to darkness. Above, the stars are brightening. The moon, a pale crescent, has begun to rise over the treetops. A few final lamps are lit, the last ones for the evening. Inside each home, the rooms now glow gently. The light doesn't overwhelm. It doesn't pretend to banish the dark. Simply offers company, warmth, presence, steadiness. The lamps don't burn forever. Their oil is rationed, their wicks trimmed. But for now, they burn softly, casting halos of gold on every wooden wall. And in this stillness, this small, glowing haven carved out of wilderness, the settlers begin to settle. Voices are low, shadows are long. The rhythm of flame becomes the rhythm of the home in the heart of the night when dreams start to stir. The lamps will be extinguished one by one until all that remains is moonlight and memory. But for now, the lamps are lit. The lamps are lit. The cabins glow gently in the dark, like quiet beacons among the trees. But before the outpost truly rests, there's one more duty to complete, one more rhythm to follow. The evening chores are not just for the people, Tate. Animals faithful, familiar, and essential are waiting. It begins with the soft creak of a door opening again. A boy, no more than 12, steps out onto the porch. His lantern swings in his hand, casting an amber circle on the path before him. The air is cooler now, edged with the scent of damp leaves and distant smoke. A fine mist has begun to rise near the ground, hovering just above the grass. He moves slowly, not out of reluctance, but care. The day's work is nearly finished, and the evening deserves a softer step. His boots crunch lightly on the dirt path. Beside him, a rope fence lines the way, separating the path from the garden beds and a low wood pile stacked like a puzzle of logs. Beyond the fence, the barn looms a squat structure of gray wood, its roof slightly bowed from years of snow and rain. It sits in the center of a fenced yard, with the last of the day's livestock mill quietly. The boy unlatches the gate. The latch clinks softly, then swings open with a rustle of dry grass beneath his feet. As he approaches, the lantern's light spills across the barn door. He slides it open. Oh, the wood groans and thuds into place. Inside, it's warmer than a night air, full of the earthy, humid scent of animals, straw, and the sweet musk of hay. The cows are already lined up in their stalls. They look up as he enters, their eyes reflecting the flickering light like polished stone. One of them, a large, steady-eyed Jersey, lowers her head again and exhales. Long and soft, the sound like a bellows in a quiet barn. He hangs the lantern on a peg near the stall. It sways slightly, casting gentle shadows along the plank walls. Then he lifts a tin pail from a hook by the door and carries it to the water pump. The pump handle is cold to the touch. It squeaks faintly as he works it 1, 2, 3 times, and then the water begins to flow. It splashes into the pail with a steady rhythm. The sound is sharp in the hush, clean and clear. He fills the pail, then sets it down beside the trough. One of the cows steps forward, her hooves muffled on the straw-strewn floor, and begins to drink. The boy watches for a moment, then scratches gently behind her ear. She doesn't react much, but doesn't pull away either. He moves down the row, checking each animal's soft words whispered, hands patting flanks and shoulders. A calf, young and still finding its balance in the world, nudges his leg with a wet nose. He smiles and rubs the calf's neck, murmuring something only they can hear. At the far end of the barn, a pair of goats stir in their pen. They blink sleepily and shift their weight as he passes. One lets out a soft bleat, more a sigh than a call. He tosses a small bundle of hay into their corner and watches as they begin to nibble lazily, staring at the stalks with deliberate, half-hearted bites. Outside, the night deepens. The wind rustles gently through the high grass, now hoots once, then falls silent again. The boy finishes watering and returns to the first stall. He sets the pail beneath the cow and crouches beside her. The milking stool creaks as he settles in. Then, with slow, practiced hands, he begins. The rhythm is ancient. A gentle squeeze, a pause, the quiet splash of milk into metal. Then again and again. The sound is hypnotic, steady, comforting, kind of lullaby played on an old tin drum. The cow shifts slightly, then stills. Outside, the lantern continues to glow, its light golden against the dark wood of the barn. Dust, motes dripped through the beam, catching the flicker and disappearing again. The boy continues milking, never hurrying. The pail fills slowly. The barn holds its breath. Farther down the barn, a hen clucks once in her roost. Its chickens already tucked into their nesting boxes, ruffle their feathers, and tuck their heads beneath their wings. The roosts are built high, away from the cool ground and lined with straw. A few eggs rest quietly beneath one of the hens. She shifts slightly, settling her weight. A soft rustle comes from the rafters. Tickle. Sleek and utterly self-assured pads silently along a beam above. It stops, eyes glowing faintly, then curls its tail around its feet and settles in to watch. The mice, sensing its presence, stay hidden in their corners. The boy finishes with the cow and pours the milk into a second, larger pail. He gives her a final pat and moves on to the next dot. Back outside, another lantern moves along the path. This one carried by the man from the neighboring cabin. He heads toward the chicken coop, a small structure near the edge of the outpost. Its door latched. With a simple loop of rope, he opens it gently. The interior is already dark, save for a faint beam of moonlight through the high slats. He doesn't need more. He's done this 100 times. He counts, hits 12 hens, one rooster, all present. Come. He scatters a final handful of feed along the floor, though most are too sleepy to respond. One or two peck lazily at the grain. He lingers for a moment, adjusting a loose board, smoothing a rough edge. Then he steps back, closes the door, and ties the rope once again. Another task done. Another box ticked on the long, quiet list of evening. The barn cat slips down from its perch and slinks into the feed room, where curls on a burlap sack and closes his eyes. Back in the barn, the boy gathers his things. Milking pail, the stool. He checks the feed, bends tomorrow's task. He closes the stall gates, latching them gently. The animals are quiet now, their breathing steady, their movements soft and slow. He lifts the lantern from its peg. Its light is lower now, but still strong enough to guide him. He slides the barn door closed behind him, careful not to let it slam. The latch clicks into place. The path back to the cabin feels even quieter than before. The mist has thickened slightly, and the night air is tinged with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The stars above are brighter now. The clearing is still. He passes the fence, then the porch. The hound lifts its head and watches him come. Pats the dog gently and sets the milk pail just inside the door. In the distance, the rooster lets out a confused, low crow, half dreaming. Then silence again. The animals are safe, fed, watered, tucked into their places like the pages of a well-worn book. And with the barn now quiet and the livestock resting, the final layer of the day's duties has been laid to rest. The outpost breathes deeply. Every soul, two-legged and four, is winding down. Only the stars remain awake, glittering cold and constant above the trees. Inside the cabin, the fire has found its rhythm again. The wood crackles softly in the hearth, flames dancing behind the iron grate, casting a gentle orange glow that flickers across the room. The scent of pine and smoke curls upward and blends with the slow simmering aromas of supper onions, bay leaves, salt pork, and barley. The stew has been cooking since late afternoon, its flavor deepening with every passing hour. Now, in the last quiet stretch of evening, it bubbles low in the pat of thick, comforting sound, soft and steady, like breath beneath a wool blanket. The woman stirs it slowly, the wooden spoon scraping the bottom of the pot in long, unhurried circles. The firelight glints along the ladle's curve, catching droplets of broth as she lifts and tastes. A small nod. Then another turn of the spoon. The boy sits at the table now, chin resting in his palm, watching the fire. His cheeks are still pink from the chill outside, but his eyes are half-lit peaceful, not yet sleepy, simply unwinding. The man sits nearby, boots off, legs stretched toward the fire. He's oiling a leather harness, his fingers moving deliberately, rubbing warmth and softness back into the stiff straps. The scent of the leather mingles with wood smoke and stew and the faint sweetness of cooling cornbread. That cornbread, now resting on a folded cloth near the hearth, had been baked earlier in the day in the Dutch oven. Its crust is golden and cracked, the interior still warm. A knife rests beside it, its wooden handle worn smooth by generations of use. The woman slices it slowly. Thick, soft wedges fall into a basket lined with homespun linen. A little steam escapes as she breaks a piece in half with her hands, testing the crumb. She smiles. A ceramic crock of butter sits nearby, chilled from the pantry. She scoops a generous pat and lets it melt slowly over a slice where it begins to pool in the cracks. The table is laid simply. A few wooden bowls, their rims smooth and familiar, tin spoons, slightly dulled from age. A pitcher of well water, pulled earlier that afternoon. A small dish of salt. Nothing more, but nothing more is needed. She ladles stew into the bowls, thick and hearty, studded with carrots, bits of potato, ribbons of cabbage, and shreds of meat from a ham hock boiled down to the bone. The aroma rises, slow and rich, filling the room, like a blanket being drawn up around the shoulders. The man stands and stretches, then takes his place at the head of the table. The boy straightens a bit. The woman sits and folds her hands. For a moment, there's only the sound of the fire. Then, in a quiet voice, the man gives thanks. Nothing elaborate. It's just a few simple words offered into the hush. For the food, for the warmth, for the work done, and the rest ahead. A short silence follows. The spoons touch the bowls. They eat slowly. Each bite is deliberate, not rushed. The stew warms the mouth, the throat, the chest. It's a good kind of warmth that lingers, that stays with you. It's a cornbread, crumbles, just a little, but holds together when dipped. The butter adds softness, and the salt sharpens the flavors. The only sounds now are gentle and human. The soft scrape of spoon on bowl. A quiet sigh, sip of water, the rustle of sleeves. The fire murmuring in the background, sometimes popping gently, like a lullaby spoken in wood. From time to time, they speak brief phrases, whispered observations from the day. The neighbor's cow gave less milk. The storm may hold off until Sunday. The bread rose better than it did last week, but mostly there is contented quiet at the far end of the cabin. A cat stretches on a braided rug, then curls itself into a tighter ball and goes still again. Its tail flicks once, then disappears beneath its body. Near the window, the shutters knock faintly in the wind. Once the meal is done, the boy clears the table, placing each bowl and spoon into a wash basin filled earlier with warm water. The clink of tin is soft, echoing gently against the sides of the basin. The woman adds a sliver of lye soap and begins to wash, her hands moving in slow circles. The water rippling and glinting in the firelight. The man returns to his chair and takes up his Bible, not to read aloud, just to turn a few pages, his eyes following familiar verses in silence. Occasionally, he stops to trace a line with his finger. His lips move slightly, but no words emerge. The hearth burns lower now, but steady. The woman finishes drying the dishes, stacking them neatly beside the basin. The boy folds the cloth napkins and places them in the drawer. Then, as the last piece of cornbread is wrapped in a cloth and placed back near the fire, the room seems to exhale. A kind of hush follows supper deeper than the quiet before it. A stillness born not from expectation, but from completion. The work is done. The bellies are full. The day has no more demands to make. The man closes the Bible. The woman folds her hands in her lap. The boy leans his head against the arm of a chair. For a few long minutes, there is nothing but the sound of the fire again. Then, from the shelf near the wall, the woman pulls a basket of mending, socks, a shirt, the edge of a quilt. She threads a needle by the firelight and begins to sew. Each stitch is small and careful, the thread whispering through the fabric. The boy watches her hands move and slowly lets his eyes fall shut. The man leans back in his chair, crossing one ankle over the other. His gaze rests on the flames. They've begun to settle lower now, red and gold fading into a soft, pulsing orange. The logs shift and fall in on themselves. The coals glowed out outside. The wind hums gently across the roof. The trees rustle in long, breathy waves. Occasionally, an acorn drops onto the hard ground with a muffled thud inside. The hearth becomes the center of everything. Its warmth reaches across the floor, up the walls, into the bones of the little cabin. The light flickers on shelves and tabletops, glowing through old glass jars and tinting the shadows with amber. Time slows. Thought softens. As the hour deepens, the woman sets the mending aside. The basket is returned to the shelf. The boy rouses, just enough to rise and kiss his mother's cheek, then walks toward the sleeping loft, feet soft on the wood floor. He climbs the ladder slowly, the lantern in his hand flickering against the rafters above. His footsteps fade below. The man stirs the coals with the poker one last motion before sleep. Sparks rise, then settle. He places the screen over the fire and checks the damper. The room dims. The woman blows out the last lamp. And the chimney glows faintly with afterlight. They move toward their bed to figures, folding into stillness. The covers drawn, the quiet, complete, and a hearth, that ancient heart of the home, flickers a few more times, then sinks into sleep. The cabin is dim, now quiet, in the way only homes can be when every soul inside has begun to turn inward. The fire has burned down to coals. They pulse slowly under the iron grate, red and fading gold, like the last breath of the day glowing, warm beneath the skin of the night. Outside, the clearing has disappeared into shadow. The mist is thicker now, hugging the ground, softening every shape and edge. Trees that stood tall and sharp just hours ago are now little more than gentle silhouettes. A single owl calls once from high above, then drifts into silence again. Inside, the woman stands near the small washstand. Her hands, so busy all day, now move slowly and softly wringing out a cloth in warm water, brushing it across her face and neck, smoothing out the edges of the day. She dries her hands on a linen towel that smells faintly of sun-dried air and lavender. It's the same towel she's used each night this week, neatly folded and always in its place. The man closes the damper in the chimney, and a deeper hush falls over the room. The last heat from the fire will linger in the stones for hours, slowly radiating through the quiet. He sets down the poker, places the screen in front of the hearth, and stands still for a long moment, one hand on the mantel, the other resting quietly at his side. The boy is already asleep in the loft above. His breathing can be heard steady, soft, rhythmic, a comfort in its own way, like wind through the trees or the distant flow of a creek. The wooden ladder to the loft creaks gently as the cat climbs it with practiced ease. She disappears into the dark above, curling up near his feet as she always does. A single lamp remains lit. It sits on the small table near the bed. Its flame now just a thin, steady point of light. Its glow spreads only a little, falling across the floorboards, catching on a carved spindle, glinting faintly on the window glass. The woman opens the old cedar chest at the foot of the bed. The hinges groan, a little familiar, pleasant sound. She lifts out a folded quilt, thick and heavy, sewn with patches from older shirts and dresses, each square a memory, each stitch a soft tether to those who came before. She spreads the quilt gently across the bed. It rustles softly, settling into place like a sigh. The man turns down the covers, brushing one hand over the sheet to smooth the wrinkles. They don't speak. Words in this hour would feel too sharp. Everything they need to say has already been said over supper, over silence, in the way their hands passed the butter or the way they smiled when the fire flared. Now, the silence is a kind of presence, a soft agreement that the day is complete. The woman picks up a small, leather-bound journal from the bedside table. The pages are yellowed, the spine gently cracked. She opens it and reads a few lines, aloud, just with her eyes. The same passage she returns to every week, a verse about rest, about the land being left fallow, about peace and stillness. She closes the book and places it back on the table. Then, slowly, she reaches for the lamp. Her fingers pause at the brass knob. For a moment, the flame seems to know. It flickers higher for just a breath, as if offering a last farewell. Then she turns the knob. The wick lowers. The flame shrinks. A breath later, it vanishes. The cabin exhales into darkness. For a long moment, there is only silence. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, your ears begin to notice the world again. Not the world of day and light and labor, but the world of night. You hear the wind outside, whispering through the cracks between the logs. You hear the creak of wood settling in the cold, like the house breathing deeply in sleep. You hear a distant dog bark just once from far beyond the clearing. The stars, though you cannot see them from within, shine above the roof. Their light, ancient and slow, falls on the clearing in silver quiet. The moon, now higher, casts its gentle arc across the trees. In other cabins, other lamps are being extinguished. One by one, across the outpost, a tide of sleep moves silently, through rooms and rafters. A father tucks a blanket tighter over a toddler's shoulder. A wife smooths her husband's brow before lying beside him. A grandmother hums a lullaby she once heard in a different language, in a different life, long ago. And then, even those small sounds vanish. The animals have long gone quiet. The cows shift once more in their stalls. Then still, the chickens roost in silence. The cat in the loft curls tighter and begins to dream of mice in morning sunlight. Outside, the clearing belongs to the trees again, to the wind and the moon, to the creatures that move in the underbrush and the stars that never blink. Inside, the cabin holds its breath. not from fear or waiting or want, because it is full of warmth, of stillness, of rest. And so the night begins, not in a sudden sweep, but in a long, slow unfolding, like a blanket drawn up over tired shoulders, like the last ember glowing softly in the hearth, like the steady, slowing rhythm of a heart preparing to dream. There is nothing more to do now, nothing more to think, just the soft presence of sleep, waiting with open arms. So close your eyes, breathe in slowly, and let the night hold you. You are safe, you are warm, you are home. If you're still with me, thank you for listening, okay? And if you've already drifted off, I hope you're resting deeply, wherever you are in the world. Whether it's morning now, or the middle of the night, know that you're never alone here. This little corner is always here for you. If this story brought you comfort or helped you sleep, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe. Or leave a comment to let me know where you're listening from. Hearing from you from faraway cities and quiet little towns is truly the best part of this. Until next time, sleep well and sweet dreams.